Welcome to first podcast of Sports Scandal. Here in the studio. My name is Samson Kimani.
Kacena.
And we're going to be going over one of the most two famous Patriots scandals, Deflategate. Starting off the bat, do you think they deflated it? Yes or no, Kyle?
Yeah, I think they did because there's no way they were able to pull off the numbers that they were doing that year without having some form of cheating to go with it.
Oh, you think the whole year?
Yeah, I think the whole year because they just kept doing so many different things that I don't think a normal team with that normal everything could have done that.
Okay. We'll be talking about the timeline, what happened, and maybe even a resource that you can go and see about whether it was deflated because they have videos up there, stuff like that. So starting off, there was reports of maybe it happening in an earlier game last time they played the Colts, but we'll be starting at the AFC Championship game. Pats destroyed the Colts 45-7. Honestly, this was Andrew Luck's closest chance to a Super Bowl. I mean, poor buddy retired. But yeah, no. Brady was in prime form. LeGarrette Blount, I mean, I don't think he got much better than this. It was a crazy game. What do you think? Did you look at all the game? Or?
I watched some of that game because I was an AFC fan and cheering for some of the AFC teams And then when I saw that score around halftime, I was like, I don't want to watch this anymore. So I kind of stopped after half because I just didn't want to keep watching a demolishing of the Colts team.
And it wasn't in this timeline, but I'm pretty sure that they had noticed the balls were deflated in the first half and then replaced them in the second half. And the Pats went on to win 28-0, score 28-0 in the second half. So, I mean, the Patriots were the better team in this game.
Yeah.
I mean, they definitely deserve to be in the Super Bowl. And they went on to beat the Seahawks. And it's the Malcolm Butler on the 1-yard line Super Bowl, which Pete Carroll and that team will always have on their resume, as they should have had to. Like that's always going to be there. So, yeah. But moving to the actual timeline, it's before they got to the Super Bowl. In fact, the day after is when the drama started because Bob Caverts tweeted that the Patriots were investigated for deflating the footballs. And, I mean, he said they were ridiculous. He said he didn't know what was talking about, blah, blah, blah. Then the next day, there are more reports with the linebacker, Jackson, saying that the balls that he noticed something unusual after he caught those balls, after the interception, noted that it was a little deflated. And apparently there's already a report from ESPN saying that 11 of the 12 footballs were deflated. When did you first hear about the story, Kyle?
I heard about it roughly around the 20th when the second portion came out is when I started hearing about it. But I suspected a little bit of cheating or some sort of stuff like that around that, like that first time it happened, like the 19th and stuff. So, yeah, I heard about it then and then just kept thinking about it after that, looking into it more, seeing what actually happened that day.
Yeah, I remember hearing some reports, but it wasn't until after the Super Bowl that it really started going downhill. And then, of course, Belichick talked to the league about how, he, believes the Patriots, they didn't obviously cheat and Brady didn't alter in any way. And they started doing an investigation even before the Super Bowl. So imagine they had to deal with all these questions, all from the league and the media, while preparing for, the greatest game of the year for them. I mean, that's pretty much their highlight is the Super Bowl. And, I mean, apparently Jackson denies tipping the league, telling the league about Jackson, the linebacker, who claims that he didn't talk about the balls being deflated. He just wanted a souvenir. And at this point, the Colts really weren't pushing for anything. They were just trying to stay out of it. And in fact, I don't know how much of this would be a story if the reporters hadn't mentioned it, like Chris Mortensen for the ESPN and the Colts reporter. Do you think it would have just not come up?
I don't think anybody would have noticed anything or saw anything if nobody said anything to him or like referenced stuff. So I think if he didn't tell them, nobody would have known about it. This whole thing wouldn't have happened, and the Patriots could have kept going with it. But since he did, I feel like they caught on to it a little bit, but didn't want to justify doing a lot of punishments with it.
Yeah. And then Belichick came out on the 24th talking about the science behind it, saying with the temperature. And I'm actually kind of agreeing with the Patriots here. If both situations, they should have won the football game anyway. Like, there was no wins where they're like, oh, if that was properly inflated, would have had 20 points instead of 28, you know? They should have won both games. And I just feel like with the, if you see, like they mentioned later on, they have, using the temperature and stuff like that, the balls can be underinflated.
Because who was the home team for that game? Was it the...
I think it was the Patriots.
So...
But it might have been, no, I'm pretty sure it was the Colts. Because
the Colts is in an indoor stadium, so like they don't have a lot of the climate stuff affecting them.
Yeah.
Unless the building was open during game time. But if it wasn't the climate, then then that stuff is kind of like not very true then, because if it was the Colts, then they have that indoor part where they can control the climate and stuff in there, so it doesn't affect the ball that much.
So yeah, the Fox Sports had reports that investigators saw inside the locker room. They saw someone bring a football in to another room and then take it out before the game, and this was a big piece of evidence that people used. And then the owner came, Robert Kraft, one of the most respected owners around the league. And, I mean, he has gotten in trouble himself recently. He, of course, defends his team and talks about what they should have gone through. And then during this time, the league investigators are still, compiling their report. And then nothing happens for about a week. And at least they give the Patriots some space to prepare for the Super Bowl. And then at the Combine, finally the Colts come out, slightly mentioning that, hey, we did talk to the league about the GM mentions that they did talk to the NFL about the balls being underinflated, and it was a concern that they had, and they finally, and from February 19th to May 6th, all people were talking about is this Deflategate thing. And it was so annoying. It was like every day, it was almost worse than the whole LeBron James versus MJ talk. It's like, is there nothing else?
Yeah, you couldn't go anywhere on TV without something being told about this whole thing. And you couldn't go on social media, anything, because there was always a story about, oh, this is happening now with it.
So yeah, the Wells report released May 6th, stating that it was more probable than not that they had underinflated the balls. And you see, my main problem with the report and in terms of defending Brady in this situation is that you can't be defending your text. Okay, you won the Super Bowl. You finished the job. So, just give him the information, because either way, the worst thing they can do is suspend you and stuff. They're not gonna ban you from the league because you underinflated footballs. So don't be defending your text, and that's what Brady did, and then I remember there was some story of him smashing his phone, and then he always does that every 6 months and stuff like that. And it's like, don't act suspicious when everyone's staring at you, just give him the phone. And if you did underinflate the balls, then, you did, and you take your punishment. But him being suspicious and all that, now people have to draw conclusions off of, what is circumstantial evidence. And I definitely did not like the way Brady and that team handled the investigation, because it's like, you're caught, they already know the balls are underinflated. So, don't be suspicious and cause them to give you the suspension.
Well, yeah. And then going on to the next, how many days is that? The next couple days, and they finally get their punishment for this whole thing.
Yeah, 5 days.
5 days from then, they got that whole punishment, which was Patriots being fined $1 million and losing 2 of their picks, and then Brady getting suspended for 4 games, which I feel like was a bit much, but I don't think it was too bad for what they did. I just think they could have done a bit less. So I don't know if, do you think Brady should have been suspended, or do you think he could have just gone with the money and just fined Brady instead of suspending?
I think that they could have suspended him 1 or 2 games if they had evidence that he directly said underinflate these balls. If it was just equipment people, and the thing is, at the end of the day, it's the Patriots, and there's such a well-run organization that you can't really have whoopsie, we underinflated the balls. No, it was a mindful decision. It's just who made that decision. And they were never able to track down who necessarily made that direct decision of underinflate these balls. I mean, I'm a Chiefs fan, so I was more than happy with him being gone 4 games.
Same.
Shoot, now he's down with the Buccaneers, and that's a whole nother story for another time.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I do think 4 games is a little much, as you got to think about that. Like, that's a 25% of the season. Like, that's a good chunk of the year. But I mean, at the same time, Brady kind of had to know that if the equipment guy was underinflating them, he was doing it on purpose. You wouldn't just be an accident. So I don't totally hate the decision. I just think that if they were actually underinflating those balls on purpose, then yes, he should. And that's what the NFL believed. Then yes, he should have received the punishment. The thing is that I'm pretty sure he didn't. They didn't underinflate those balls, and they actually do have evidence. The Patriots went point by point through the Wells report, giving their reasons why that Wells report was incorrect. And that website's still up, and I was looking at it today at wellsreporttest.com. But yeah, no, on there, it has a video. And yes, it's an MIT guy, but he's a Eagles fan, so in fact, he doesn't like the Patriots. But yeah, wellsreportcontext.com, and they go through why the Wells report isn't true. And I watched some of that video, and it made sense. When they're recording the temperature of those footballs, it is similar to a scientific procedure. So they could be up to 2 PSI off. So, and 2 PSI, I think was more than 2 PSI that the balls were underinflated. But at the same time, like, the conditions they were doing it in, they weren't careful at all. It's NFL. They're not going to be there with gloves and trying to, do it perfectly. So, I mean, there is definitely room for error. And then the ball was getting used. So it might have been inflated at the very lowest that it could be. And then it being used and then thrown around stuff, it may eventually become underinflated. I remember people were talking about, like, Gronk spiking the ball. Did that push out a whole bunch of air and stuff? So I think there is enough evidence per se to say that there is a chance that the ball could be underinflated. And I'm saying, go check out that website. It's actually pretty interesting. But what do you think, Kyle? Is there any room for error there?
I mean, they could have a lot of room, because it is people, when people make mistakes like that, they could have easily just accidentally or purposely did the whole thing. But then you go to that next day, actually, Brady then comes out saying he wants to appeal his whole 4-game thing, which then they don't want anybody that can fight against them, and so they wanted a neutral person to do the whole case and appeal that Brady wants to do.
Yeah. And yeah, no, it was in Foxborough. So it was actually colder than normal. I mean, it's February in New England, so the balls, I mean, it could be colder. You can have less air in there. I mean, the same thing is with your tires. Sometimes the warning will go off because you have less air in there. So, I mean, I definitely think that there was enough room, and it was a little bit of a harsh suspension. And yeah, you're right. They wanted to appeal the punishment, and they were asking that Goodell isn't the one to be the arbitrator, because they wanted him as a witness. And I mean, it seemed, but I mean, they had they had, people continuing to bring reports about, Tom Brady's personality went down. Someone who contributed to that website was compensated by the Patriots through Kraft, which is a little under the table. Kraft and Belichick keep talking about how they're, that he never did anything, and they keep trying to talk to the NFL, hoping that Goodell doesn't be the arbitrator. And then apparently Goodell and Kraft met at a birthday party, talked about it, and Kraft decides to not try to appeal now his part of the punishment. That doesn't include the 4 games, which they make very clear. The NFLPA makes very clear that doesn't affect the discipline with Brady. So, and then the NFL, and then apparently ESPN claimed that they were firing the equipment managers, and Patriots denied that. So I don't know if those guys are still there. McNally and Durance Mesky. That's definitely some New England last names. But Brady kept fighting, and eventually the NFL said, no, we're gonna have Goodell be the arbitrator. And what do you think about that, Kyle? I definitely think that's a little bogus.
Yeah, I mean, he is the owner of the whole thing. So, he could have his side of the story, they could have theirs, and then it doesn't matter if whoever's the arbitrator at that point could just side with whoever he wants, really. And if it wants to be commissioner, thank you. He could be siding with whatever he wanted to side with, and it just didn't matter to anybody, really, if anything went bad or happened to Brady. I feel like if you weren't a Patriots fan at that time, you didn't really mind if his penalty had stayed and kept him out for those 4 games, but I think didn't it end up staying?
Yeah, no, it definitely stayed. They couldn't find some vice president or some president who's neutral or something like that. They couldn't find anyone at the office. This is how many $1 million company and the league, and they couldn't find anyone to be like, hey, yeah, we'll have you, we'll have you do the hearing. But yeah, the NFL rejected the motion, which most people expected, and they had the hearing, and surprise, surprise, Goodell's and by this time it's already June 2015, so season's about to start, and Goodell said no, he's not going to appeal that. So Brady takes it to court. And the NFL stood strong. It was Brady against the NFL, and it's is this really worth fighting for? I mean, how far would you have gone, Kyle?
I don't think I would have gone to court, since it's only 4 games, which you don't, unless it's that badly that your team was doing. If it's any other team than the Patriots, I feel like he would have cared more. But I feel like since it's the Patriots and they have all those great players that could have handled without Brady those 4 games, I feel like he could have just stuck out those 4 games, gone back that next week, and then just finished the rest of that year out normally and just forgot about this whole thing happening.
Yeah, so apparently some district judge, when Brady went to court September 3rd, a district judge agreed with Brady and erased his 4-game suspension. NFL had another appeal, and that appeal said that they would reinstate the suspension after peppering the Brady's attorneys with tough questions. And the judges were very against the Patriots. I don't know if they were Seahawks fans or something. And then Brady tried to file an appeal, and at this point, it's 500 days since the whole thing started. The appeal was rejected, and he decided he won't appeal to the Supreme Court. My case is, at this point, you've had 3 court cases. Just go to the Supreme Court. You put this much money into it, you might as well try to go to the Supreme Court.
And we're just getting closer and closer to the season starting, so might as well just wait.
It was July 15th.
Yeah.
So.
The season was already getting close to started. Or getting closer to preseason, which I think. Yeah. Wouldn't those count? Didn't those count as just 4 games, or were they 4 regular season?
Yeah, it was 4 regular season. They got to make it hurt where it counts. But would you have gone to the Supreme Court at this point? I would have, definitely.
I would have, with how many cases with how many court systems he wanted to get going through, and then with all the stuff the NFL keep bringing back up, I would have just gone straight to the Supreme Court at that point and let them hear it and figure it out from there.
So yeah, everyone took their punishment. $1 million out the door.
2 draft picks.
2 draft picks, and Brady served his 4 games. But the aftermath, I think, is way bigger than people think it is, because it changed the course of some of the franchises in the league. All right, hear me out. In those 4 games, we saw Jacoby Brissett and Jimmy Garoppolo play. No one would barely know like how good Jimmy G was if he didn't play in those 4 games. So he gets traded to the 49ers, which, by the way, and the thing is why did he get traded? Because Brady thought that Jimmy G was a threat to his job because he got so much hype being the backup, and he told Kraft, get him out of here. So Kraft was like, okay, Belichick, you're going to have to get him out of here, because remember, Belichick is the GM and the coach. So then, which respect to Bill Belichick, honestly. I mean, props to him. He put Jimmy G in a good situation. He knew Kyle Shanahan was a good coach, and he knew that'd be a good team. So he sent him there for a second-round pick, which was way under his value, but, you know.
I mean, I feel like it was a steal, though, for the 49ers
to
get that good of a player.
But considering,
for just a second overall round pick.
But considering how much little that was, that almost guarantees that it was pressure from the owner to get rid of him. Then Brissett gets traded to the Colts because of, again, the hype from playing those couple of games, looking great. And, I mean, decent, relatively average to above average quarterbacks are hard to come back. Now, this past week, Jimmy G did get benched. But, I mean, he still took the team to the Super Bowl, and it was a close game. I mean, he was one overthrow on Emmanuel Sanders away from winning that game, which, praise the Lord, because I'm a Chiefs fan again. But, I mean, do you think this affected those careers of those franchises? Because I think it definitely did.
Yeah, I feel like if this never happened, we would have never known about Jimmy G or Jacoby Brissett, because they could have just been nobody knows backup QBs, because Brady never really needed a backup half the time unless he got hurt.
And it would have just been Patriots' role.
Yeah.
Right now, Jacoby Brissett is the backup with the Colts. I definitely think this affected a lot more than people realize, and it'll be interesting to see. Now they do have Cam Newton. I feel bad for the Patriots, but at the same time, I don't. You know, so
follow-up question: do you think that whole situation could have led to Brady wanting to leave the Patriots and go to Buccaneers?
I mean, the thing is that it was a cause effect. So because of all that stress from that, and people already being like, well, Brady's starting to get old. Oh, maybe, we should get those backups in. They look kind of good. Then they traded them and they thought it was done. But I think that whole situation already caused tension between Belichick and Brady. And that just kept building and building and building until they're like, and then Brady had his own personal trainer that I can't remember, Guerrero, I think his name is. And he would have players go to that trainer instead of the team's trainer. And then Belichick kicked out of that trainer out of the team's facilities because he used to be able to go in the facilities and stuff. I mean, eventually, after that loss, against the Bills, I guess Belichick was able to convince Kraft to get rid of him. Because, Kraft at the end of the day was the main reason why they couldn't get rid of Belichick. Belichick loves getting rid of players 1 or 2 years earlier than how bad. 2 years early than 2 years late. And obviously with Brady, it was 2 years late than it should have been. And that's why he had those backups in place, because those were good backups. Now looking at it, they're both at least starting quarterbacks. Yes, Garoppolo had one bad game, but I still think he's a starting quarterback in this league. So what happened. But yes, I do think it eventually led to the tension between Brady and Belichick. And it was time for Brady to go anyway. He's 45 right now? So
yeah,
I definitely think that caused it. So ending thoughts. What are your last thoughts about the whole thing?
I just think the whole Deflategate was too
43
much. And I think it just led to too many bad things that happened that following year and just left a bad feeling for a lot of the Patriots.
Bill Belichick is multiple time caught cheater. Okay. I think, was it last season? They had some guys, Patriots media out here videoing a team's practice before a game or something. They were warming up and stuff, and they were videoing, and they caught him. I think it was against the Bills. They videoed them practicing and getting together, and it's, Patriots meetup. With the Patriots. And it's like, it's little things like that. It's like, really? Do you really need to do, like, and the thing is you don't really find other teams out here doing this. I mean, maybe no one else is on the alert for that, but I mean, I'm pretty sure most other teams just follow the rules and, aren't trying to video people, which, Spygate, and that's a whole nother issue for another time, maybe another episode. Who knows?
For maybe another episode.
But I think Belichick is a proven cheater, and I don't think that it contributed all of his wins, but it definitely helped. I think it definitely helped with his Super Bowl rings. But he's a good coach. He's a great coach. I mean, he's an all-time great coach. No one can sit here and not say that. So
he's very old school of a coach too. Yeah, with the way he does everything
and comes to work with a torn-up shirt. He literally doesn't care. If I could have Belichick on my team, I'd defend him like crazy. But he's not, and I just think that right now Belichick is. He is a proven cheater, and we all know it is. So that should be it for our first Sports Scandal podcast. Unless you had something else to adding, Mr. Kacena.
Nope.
It's going to be interesting seeing how the Patriots still living with the aftermath. Thank you for listening. Keep an eye out for another episode, hopefully soon. Have a good day.